I just ran a 5k in 29 minutes, so that's a new personal best milestone for me. Whilst I was on my run, I had a realization that I wanted to make a video about, that having bad genetics is actually a good thing. I think genetics is probably like the most common excuse I've heard out of anyone who I've trained with. It's the excuse that I've used myself plenty of times during the first few years of my training, and I've heard so many people use it. It's probably the most common excuse that I see online, that, oh, I've got poor genetics. I started off at a worse or lower place than everyone else, and that means that I should get like extra credit or extra sympathy or empathy. I felt the same way, so I understand how these people feel because I've been through that journey. Something I realized a long time ago was that we just all have our individual journeys, and the harder your journey, the harder the struggle and the problems that you have and the ones that you have to overcome, the better in a certain way, because it just makes life way more rewarding. Imagine, for example, if we talk about the fitness niche. In high school, there was always those guys who just had a six-pack and they had some muscle definition. They had some muscle mass already through just puberty. And obviously I wasn't one of those guys. I was the skinny fat, which is probably one of the worst ways to start, because that meant that I was extremely weak as well. So I didn't even start with some strength. Some guys naturally hit puberty and just started getting fat. Other guys got really skinny, and obviously some guys got that slight amount of muscle mass. So those guys had the great genetics. But the ones that I can remember right now, I don't believe a single one of them actually got into consistent training after that, because their struggle, their problems, they didn't really have many. In terms of fitness, they had the easy path, and so they didn't need to overcome anything and actually seek those rewards. When you start off with worse genetics, then you have something to overcome, and when you overcome the harder thing, you just get more benefits, you get more of a reward. So I just realized today that actually having bad genetics, having bigger and worse problems than someone else is a good thing if you are doing the work that actually solves that problem. So if you started off like me as like a skinny fat guy, or just a guy who wasn't fit, and you overcome that by training consistently for years, it will tenfold your experience. You'll feel just better because you've accomplished more, because you started off at a worse point. It's like starting off with a handicap. Imagine a race and you're starting off behind everyone else. If you still win, then you're like a champion. You're going to get a bigger cheer from the crowd, and you're going to feel better knowing that you started off behind everyone else. And that really is the race of life. But obviously, maybe don't compare yourself to everyone else in terms of a race, but when you think about how competitive life is, and obviously the fact that like money is so important, and so therefore success is so important, then competition is very important for us. And if you're starting off behind everyone else and you still succeed, then you're just gonna be the bigger champion. But most likely, before you've been training for a long time, you are gonna have some races where you start off behind everyone else and you end up behind everyone else as well. That's to be expected. For the first 4 years of my training in fitness, I used the genetics excuse, and I hated the fact that I was going to the gym with some guys who had literally just started, and their bodies, their natural bodies looked like mine after I had been training for 2-3 years. So I still felt like I had more strength and more size than them, obviously with 4 years of training. But they're just genetic, natural state without even training like at all, because I was like the first person they had actually gone to the gym with. They were like 2-3 years faster than me. But now when I'm 4, 5, 6 years in, there isn't anyone who started off with the same amount of muscle mass as I have now. And that means that I have finally finished that race. I started behind everyone else and I finished before everyone else, or I finished way past everyone else. Everyone else stopped at the 100-meter mark and I went 150. And that means that it was just a bigger reward for me. So, but yeah, I just ran 5k, 29 minutes. So that's another challenge that I've just overcome. And I could then bring up the bad genetics again and just say that I started off with shin splints, with very weak and small joints, which meant that running has been extremely difficult for me my entire life. And just today I've hit a milestone of 5k in 29 minutes. So bad genetics are a good thing.